This week, we have Josh, Mandy, Sam, Lee, and Larry talking about, well, AMD has released some patches for some microcode validation vulnerabilities that were disclosed. There's a long history. This actually goes back in time, probably till last week as well, something I've been tracking very closely. There are some amazing piece of research from Watchtower Labs talking about taking over abandoned AWS buckets that I thought was interesting. There's some couple interesting tools that I want to highlight, including also Zoom made a publication about a vulnerability that I find just very confusing. There's some UEFI memory forensics research that I'm super jazzed about, which you can tell where I spend my time. Probably talk a little bit about 3D printing. Larry's got a story about Bamboo, Mirai cellular security, the ESP32C5, which we covered before, but is worth mentioning as well. I have an article that will be publishing this week, probably Friday, on the ESP32. We got to talk about Deepseek. We got to talk about the Wiz research. Go all had supply chain issues this week as well. And of course, Sam Bound will be in here with some amazing stories about AI.
This is a really long intro.
Really long intro. How about that? All that and more on this episode of Paul's Security Weekly. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things getting sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. ThreatLocker implements a least privilege approach to cybersecurity, blocking every executable unless specifically authorized by your team. This methodology mitigates ransomware, supply chain attacks, and zero-day exploits, and ensures protection for your organization 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To learn more about how ThreatLocker can help prevent known and unknown threats in your digital environment, safeguard your data and operations from threat actors, and align your organization with respected compliance frameworks, visit securityweekly.com/threatlocker. Coming to you from Purgatory Studios in semi-high definition, compliments of Darth Vader himself. This is Paul's Security Weekly. It's episode number 860, being recorded on Wednesday, February 5th, 2025, being published tomorrow, Thursday, February 6th. I'm, of course, Paul Asadorian, staying warm here in the studio, which currently doesn't have heat other than the space heaters behind Larry and I. So Larry is here with me in studio.
There's the space heaters are both behind you.
No, well, you know,
for the record.
Well, but there's that.
But I'm happy to be here.
Are you warm enough? Do you need to cuddle? We can cuddle if we get cold.
Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
Well, it's good to have you here, Larry. Mr. Josh Marpet is here with us. Josh, welcome.
I love the fact that you're like, behind Larry and I. And Larry's like, what the fuck? No, I don't have one.
No, I don't have. I'm actually kind of getting warm. I might have to take my jacket off. I might give it to Larry.
Rub it in. Okay.
That's what I'm saying when you cuddle.
We'll need a moment to adjust space heaters. Mandy Logan is here with us. Mandy, welcome.
Well, hello, and I am so excited about the AWS story
of the week, for sure.
Oh my gosh, that was
because the way they write their blog articles is just spectacular.
It's amazing.
Spectacular. I mean, the adjectives I could come up with how they write. I mean, meme game on point. The whole thing.
Oh my gosh.
Like every one of their findings.
Watchtower Labs.
Yeah. They just own it. You know, they
every one of their findings. Threat level. What the fuck?
Yeah. I can't. Like, it's so entertaining and informative. Sam Bound is here with us. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Glad to be here.
And Mr. Lee Neely.
I am with us. Good to be back. I simply can't unsee the image of Paul and Larry cuddling to stay warm.
Rub it in. Rub it in.
Wouldn't be the first time. Probably not the last either.
These guys give it all for the podcast. Hats off to them.
So RSA is coming up, and Security Weekly listeners can save $100 on their RSA Conference 2025 full conference pass. The RSA Conference will take place April 28th to May 1st in San Francisco and on demand. You can register using the discount code by visiting securityweekly.com/RSAC25 and use the code 5U5SEC weekly. Many of us will be there. So stop by and say hi.
Yeah, there's a contingent in Broadcast Alley again this year. Maybe
I
something.
don't know of such things.
All I know is I was selected as an alternate for speaking this year.
Yes.
So we'll
congratulations.
Yeah, I mean we don't wish ill will on anyone, but
right.
That's the only way I'll get
if it does have someone can't make it, Larry's happy to.
That means I need to
happy to
finish my
step in.
slides. Yeah.
And yes, we will be in Broadcast Alley.
Okay.
Very nice.
I don't, I'm out of touch with those kind of things. I work a full-time job for Eclipsium, and I maintain the studio. And I have a family. That's my life right now.
You have enough work, you have enough jobs.
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
I know the feeling.
Earlier this week last week there was no water, and now there's no heat here in the studio. So it's been a journey,
Yeah.
But there's lots of security news this week.
Did you forget anyone?
No. Who am I forgetting?
I don't know. Did you remember Lee?
You got
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. See, I forgot somebody. I forgot you got Lee.
It's
I'm
okay.
ready to
It's
jump.
going to be that kind of show, folks.
Are we ready to jump in? Where do we want to jump in?
Well,
Mandy, you actually tried to put some organization around this.
there's a reason you keep
I
you. There's
did.
more than one reason we keep you around.
This is 0.5 of the reason. Like reviewing everyone's articles that had been submitted earlier, I came up with let me say 745 calculations later, I have recommended a flow chart for the discussion. That's
all
what
right. What are we covering first then?
Anthropic.
It's on the page.
All right.
Sam's number 2, please.
Yeah.
Oh, Sam's number 2. Okay. There was a lot of reading before I got to. Okay, Sam's. We're going to get better at this.
What
bitter?
you got to do.
We might be bitter, but we're also going to be better at this moving forward.
You got to take Donald Trump's policy. You just read the bullet points, ignore everything else. Anyway, so I thought this was
there
important.
will now be a tariff on this podcast too, by the way.
So
What's that?
Sam's story number 2 was
Anthropic.
Anthropic dares you to jailbreak its new AI model.
Yes, and I think this is really important because, as you probably know, all the large language models are vulnerable to jailbreaks, and they don't seem to have any good defenses at all. And the defenses they have seem to be like keyword matches, so they're trivial to bypass. But Anthropic's decided to really fix this. So they used another AI to generate thousands of jailbreaks and then trained it to understand them and ignore them. And they got it good enough that it withstood 3,000 hours of unsuccessful bug bounty claim attempts. So now it's open to the world. You can win a prize by jailbreaking it. But you have to come up with a universal jailbreak that will get it to do 10 forbidden things. And anyway,
10 forbidden things.
but I think this is a big step forward. Until now, I haven't seen any good anti-jailbreak measures that work at all. And this sounds like one that works.
As opposed to Deepseek.
Oh, yeah, Deepseek is. I tell you, Deepseek, they tested Deepseek and it failed every single test.
I have an LLM question though. If you can run the models locally, right? There are certain models that you can run locally. Deepseek is one.
Right.
Llama is another. I've run a local Llama model just as like a quick test, just see if I could do it. It was fun. How do you take the jailbreaking or the guardrails off of it if you run it locally?
Well, I don't know about the jailbreak guardrails. If you want to get rid of the, for example, the censorship in Deepseek, you can do it, but you have to retrain it. And I found instructions how to do that. And apparently the training is something you can do without having a ton of money or hardware. That's the whole point of Deepseek.
Steal from OpenAI and then retrain Deepseek. I mean, that's
well, I don't know.
Is that the high level?
What?
I mean, that's essentially the high level.
I don't really. I didn't see that in the instructions, but I haven't really done it yet. I've thought of doing it. It'd be a good project.
The concept here is that the guardrails are either in the code for the LLM,
right,
or they're in the training of the model data into the LLM.
Well,
Because
they're
you
in
can
code
train
that's
it.
not in the LLM, right? They're in code that's written in a normal language like Python, so it actually does what you tell it to.
Right.
And therefore, it's not very smart. It's just using keywords or something, so it's pretty easy to get around.
Right.
If you could actually train the LLM to know, don't tell people how to build a bomb and things like that, that would be better. And that seems to be what Anthropic has done here.
Anthropic's got really smart friggin' people, let's be honest here. And they weight the data in such a way and train the model in such a way that it will not tell you where the dead hooker storage is, as early versions of Siri used to. And they will not tell you.
It's an oddly specific example. But
it's
the model
stuck in
isn't.
their
But the
head.
model's not storing the data of the recipe on how to create the bomb, or
an LLM is a RAG.
Your oddly specific example of the dead hooker storage. Like, it doesn't.
But this is what classifiers keep from. This is what so the classifiers, is Anthropic the one creating the classifiers then on what we're talking about here?
Yes.
Okay.
Mandy, may I?
Yeah.
So an LLM, and this may take a minute, is a RAG. It's a retrieval augmented generator. And so the LLM has the model data, which is how do you answer the question? And then there's the actual data that you answer the question with, and that is what I call collections of data. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So these are two separate data sets. But the model data, how do you answer the question? You wait. So if the how do you answer a question is with a recipe for a bomb, which is a combination of a keyword and a how-to, then you weight that very low and you weight very high I'm not going to tell you things like that are dangerous. Okay.
I gotcha.
And you classify, and this goes back to Mandy's classifier question. Some things are classified as dangerous. So anything dangerous, the weights for giving them the actual answer are low, and the weights for giving them a go away answer are high.
So you're classifying the logic, basically.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
And then, but the answers, where is the data stored? Does it? Because all the models don't necessarily reach out to the internet. The new R1s do.
Some do. Some don't. Yeah.
No, the data is not stored anywhere. It makes a mathematical model of the internet, which encodes a summary of all the data on the internet. It isn't storing data anywhere. The weights themselves enable it to simulate any page it's ever seen on the internet to some accuracy.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's an algorithm, basically, that's answering the questions.
It's actually somewhat like what humans do. Humans read all these pages, and then they remember the gist of it, but not every word.
And that's why you need all those GPUs to drive it, because you're doing a heck of a lot
It's
of math.
computationally expensive.
Well, you need all those GPUs to train it. You don't need any to drive it. Using it once it's trained is relatively easy, and you can do it on a cell phone or a small computer.
Oh, okay.
All you have to do is add up a trillion numbers, which is not too hard. But training it involves adjusting all those trillion numbers through vast numbers of iterations to find the best values.
Okay.
The weights.
Yeah.
So the how do you answer questions is the tough part computationally. That's what the GPUs are used for.
No, training it, learning.
That's what I'm saying.
Model, learning a model of all the data. Yeah, modeling all that data is the hard part. Using it is not very expensive after that.
Yeah, training the model,
right,
is the hard part. That's the computationally expensive part. It's the and remember that with a RAG, you don't necessarily have to model all the data. You just have to, in terms of, you don't have to model where the data is to pick up to answer the question. You can have a search engine act as the front end of the RAG, which will then go and grab whatever data it deems necessary and excerpt it for the actual generative AI to answer.
They're not storing all the data on the internet in a database somewhere.
God, no.
Right.
No, not at all.
That would be silly.
Yeah, there is. They are. It's called in this big database called the internet.
Yeah, but what you're doing is you're doing what scientists do. You're taking all that data and you're boiling it down to an equation. Like they look at all the planets and then figure out F equals ma explains it. That sort of thing. It's making a mathematical model that represents all that data to some precision.
Yeah. And it's fascinating to see, because what it's doing is it's, in one sense, it's doing something incredibly cool, which is crystallizing or distilling all the data down into how do I answer questions. And it creates this mathematical model that then becomes a general purpose model so that you don't have to redo it every time you want to answer a question. Like F equals ma, exactly.
Yeah,
is that what we refer to as, because I used Perplexity and it said it was using R1.
Yes.
I'm assuming that's a general model that multiple LLMs are using?
Perplexity can use Deepseek R1, which is their latest reasoning model, and Perplexity does use the internet. It does a Google type search of the internet and then includes that as additional data to answer the question.
It's why I like Perplexity.
Yeah.
For
really nice,
for certain tasks, I should say, right?
Yeah.
If you're in cybersecurity, right, and you want it to summarize an article, you want it to explain a topic in cybersecurity, like, I think it's great at that, right? But when it comes to how do I write this code, I like GPTs that are tuned in Chat GPT. I
But
do
that's-
still have it on my list to go to Claude, right?
Mhm.
So you're changing your model and your LLM platform based on the task that you have to do.
And that's exactly the point. What you just stated was that I'll call it the personality, but the specialty of the model,
Right.
because when they bake the model, when they train the model, when they crystallize and distill all that all those how do you answer questions down into these mathematical formulae, and I'm bastardizing, don't yell at me, anybody who's an AI expert, but they train it based on what types of questions they want it to answer and how they want it to answer. So you can train a general purpose question answering model, and you can train a data analytics model, and you can train a policy and procedure model, and an astronomical model, and an astrophysics model, and a chemistry model, and a.
But I'm not training a model.
You're not, but you're utilizing different
of
models for different tasks.
Yes, but also contextualizing the model in a GPT or whatever Perplexity called a space. It's a Perplexity space. Yeah. I've contextualized a Perplexity space to write articles as Paul, right? As Paul. So I gave it writing samples. I gave it some prompts to add on top of whatever prompt I'm giving it. So I said, like, always use eclipsium.com/blog as a resource.
Right.
Right. So like today, I was really pressed for time. And my boss was like, we probably should write a blog post about this when we're referring to the AMD signature validation bypass. And I'm like, oh boy, wow. I'm like, hang on a second. And I went to Perplexity and I gave it a whole bunch of links of all the resources I collected. And I'm like, can you just write a blog post as, I didn't have to say as me. I just said, write a blog post using these additional resources, using the contextualization I've already given you, spit out a blog post. And I pasted that into a Google Doc. And I was like, someone else needs to, like, I need to modify this, or someone, like, we need to like collaborate and modify this because we can't publish it as is. But now we're 75% of the way there, roughly. In this case, it was maybe 70%. It wasn't as good. But
so Paul, there are AIs now that will simulate a face and a voice like this and make podcasts.
Right?
Yeah.
Would you please give our bosses any thoughts? Okay, don't do that. No, and also,
part of me is I want to play around with single board computers and write code. So if I can automate the rest of my professional life with LLMs, like I'm good with that. I don't know that I want to emulate my personal life with LLMs, but
well, you've heard the joke, Paul, that pretty soon, computer engineers and computer people aren't going to be doing any technical tasks. They're just going to be HR managers for a bunch of LLMs.
Yeah, maybe someday.
I hope.
I don't know. I think we're a long ways away from that.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I hope so.
Long way away.
Don't think we're that far away from something similar. I think that there's going to be extraordinary people doing things and building things and discovering things, and a lot of people out of running LLMs to do the actual mundane tasks.
I think it's going to be an assistant for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to find quite some time, 3 years or 5.
Yeah. Well,
nice.
I mean,
well, and are you talking about early adopters or mass use?
Me, mass use, 5 to 7 years.
Either of you.
Yeah. Well, I think we've already seen mass use. I mean, AI is embedded in every product now.
It is.
Whether it needs it or not.
I was thinking like worldwide, though. Do you think that's the same in all countries?
Oh, that's a good question. No. And
see, I was thinking like more ubiquitous, like so.
Well, here's the thing.
I'm thinking if it's more global and it's kind of mass use, then I would guess 12 to 18 years.
Well, how many people in a third world country, and I'm not trying to diss them, there's third world countries. How many people in a third world country are knowledge workers as opposed to what they call primary workers? How many people in the US are primary workers? They're growing food, they're, getting energy, etc., as opposed to how many people are tertiary or quaternary workers. The primary workers actually provide something you need in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Secondary workers take care of primary workers, tertiary workers take care of the secondary and the prime, and so on and so forth. I'm bastardizing, don't yell at me. But the point is how many people in the US are whatever the quaternary are 4th, 5th, 6th tiers.
At what level do you put podcasters in that list?
like 12th,
First level,
15th tier.
first tier.
Yeah, we have a garden. I garden. I grow food. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to keep on this topic, but talk about Deepseek and the database leak, and also address any. I mean, the leak is a privacy concern because it's essentially a leak, right?
Mhm.
It provides people with access to the plain text chat messages and all of the basically prompts, right?
Yep. And that was one of the things that I got kind of confused about when I started to skim a little bit of these types of things with the exposure was like, plain text chat messages. Well, what does that mean? Like, is it like internal support chat messages? No, it was
like
actual
your conversations
prompts.
with your
It was
prompts
the
with
actual
LLM.
prompts and the responses from the LLMs. So
Right.
that was
Which is a great reason not to put any intellectual property or secrets of any kind into the LLM. I'm still hyper sensitive to that, even though I understand some of the attack vectors might be difficult to target someone, but still I don't want that data in there. So when I'm working with internal and proprietary software like at Eclipsium, or if we're doing a project for a customer, I treat that highly sensitive data as like sometimes that data doesn't even end up in a Google property, Google spreadsheet or share, right? Like that's, but I think that's a fundamental aspect of security that I think we tend to lose sight of. And that is how you classify your data and handle it according to the classification.
Yeah, and I would not assume that it's difficult for people to steal that data once it gets into the LLM, because when authors wanted to see if their books had been scraped, all they had to do was put a few paragraphs of the book in there, and that would prompt it, and it would fill in pages of the book. So if I could just guess a paragraph of one of your documents, I might just be able to easily retrieve the rest.
Right, but that would mean you'd already have my intellectual property, right?
No,
like
maybe not all of it.
Copyrighted material is one thing because it's out there.
Maybe
and it's
I could
copyright.
copy it. Maybe I could get like the letterhead or the boilerplate language disclaiming rights at the top of another release from your company or something.
You do have a point, Sam. If you get a little bit of my data, you could get a lot of my data if I put a lot of it in the LLM.
I could ask an LLM, write the first paragraph of this report in the voice of Paul Asadorian, and it might get close enough to prompt the other LLM to spit out the whole thing.
Right.
That's like when we track down escaped criminals because of their use of punctuation.
Yeah.
Like the way they used, an individual used punctuation was different.
Yeah, we all have like our
else, so we
data has
a
a signature, Mandy. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to address too, because I saw a video online, right, and it was someone saying, "Well, when you go to Deepseek, your data is going to China, even though they say it's not going to China. It's going to China."
Well, if you use the web interface, yeah,
it might be. But even if you use the app, he actually had a phone with the app running that was specifically connected. I don't know if you saw this video, but specifically connected to an Ethernet interface. Then he had Wireshark
capturing where the data was going.
Yeah, and he was like, "Well, it's going to China. It's going to Baidu. It's going here and there." I'm like, "Well, they might be hosting some stuff on Chinese-owned cloud services."
Yeah,
and so I mean, your data is going to China, but like that's how the app is working. I'm not saying they're not violating privacy or
you could put it on your own server.
Kind of stuff.
If you're using somebody else's
because I noticed
server,
that when EFF's Privacy Badger, like I looked at what it was flagging when I went to Deepseek on the web, and it was like, oh, it's stuff like just trackers going here, there, and everywhere. And I'm like, that's probably more indicative than just doing a packet capture and saying, well, it's going to China. Well, yeah, we all know like Deepseek is hosted in China, so there's going to be links back to China. But
I think
where is it going in China and what data is being sent is a better question.
So, Sam, you had a comment in there, and then I'll sort of.
Yeah, I just mean if you use any of the public servers, your data is going out of your control to somebody you can't trust. So you should be running models on your own server.
I mean, it's feel like we've come full circle, right? When we look at cloud adoption, like, well. Now your server is on, your data or instances on someone else's server, and you've lost control of that. And a lot of organizations have peeled that back and gone, oh, we'll just run it locally again. I feel like there's been a course correction, if you will.
To be
with
fair, all the ones I know,
computing
they don't
resources.
actually run it locally. They just rent their own Amazon instance and run it there,
Right.
but it's not public.
Right.
Private cloud.
Oh, private cloud.
I think because exactly, and I think there's all different ways to slice that, right? So you may not own the server, but you may rent the server and put your stuff on it, and someone else maintains the server. And there's a different, Matt Alderman had a great matrix of responsibilities for the cloud, right? And it was like, well, if you want to own all your own stuff, have all your own hardware, like the whole thing, all the way to you just wrote a small little what do they call that? Lambda function.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my code is running in Amazon and they're taking care of everything else, right? And every option in between. And I feel like LLMs, I think it was might have been Josh Corman and I were having some of these discussions, right? LLMs, I feel like fit in that same model. Your security appliances fit in a similar model. Do I want to run my own firewalls? Do I want it to be a virtual appliance? I can't do everything open source. I mean, I could, but there's a lot of features that are missing. And so you have to make these decisions about responsibility versus like the security model versus the how much effort do I want to put into it, right? The resources that I have. And that might be different depending we're talking about LLMs or the cloud or security appliances. But this is kind of you have to do the threat model and you have to do a risk assessment.
Yeah. And speaking to that threat model and that risk assessment, Paul, and we start back to Deepseek and the video saying all the data is going to China, and your assertion is it's a Chinese company. We know it's going to China because the stuff is being hosted in China, and to us that seems kind of obvious. But I think the larger implication is what many of these folks are trying to get to is that the data is going to China, and it is. It is going to China. It is now residing in China on Chinese servers controlled by companies that are Chinese companies. And the risk that runs is that in many cases, these Chinese companies are subject to rules by the Chinese government.
Correct.
And the Chinese government can come in and say, give me all your data.
Yep. Well, they not only do that, you have to report any vulnerabilities to them. There's a whole long story about that, but actually, can I get back really quick, Paul, to what you were saying about different varieties of LLM? I'm an EINS faculty member, and you have to be an EINS client to get a copy of this, but I'll happily tell anybody. I broke down LLMs into 4 categories because it was driving me frigging nuts explaining this to people. And this is relevant because what I did was I realized it's all about where the shared data environments are. If your prompt is a shared data environment, if your prompt gets shared with everybody else, it is a free or public LLM like ChatGPT free or DeepSeek free or whatever. If you have the model is shared, then you probably have an enterprise or a shared LLM, which is like Copilot, paid, ChatGPT Enterprise, whatever. If you're sharing the model itself, not necessarily the model data, but the model with other people, it's probably a managed LLM, which means that somebody's managing an LLM for you, but it's your LLM. They're just managing it for you. So you're probably sharing models with other people. Okay. But if there's no shared data environment, then it's a private LLM. It's mine. I run it. It's in my environment on my hardware or infrastructure or whatever, and nobody else has access to it. So it's the limits of where is your shared data environment is how I define the different types of LLMs. Just FYI. And I think that's useful for people.
No, I agree. And I think I think it's a great example of source code. Great tutorials out there that are like, you go get a Llama model, you install it locally, you tie it to your IDE. That way, when it's making suggestions or you're asking it questions while you're developing, it's yours and it's staying locally. So when you're developing your own intellectual property, it's staying all on your machine. And I think that's a great use case for that.
Yeah, because otherwise you've got to read the terms of service and the 47,000 pages of bull crap to find out if any code that it spits out is yours or theirs.
The code I'm developing now, I'm gonna put an open source license on it.
It's fine,
and it's gonna be available. So I'm like, I gotta use an LLM all I want. Like, doesn't matter to me because I'm gonna open source it anyway.
What if you write code with the LLM and the LLM licenses it before you can?
Yeah, that's a great question. How is licenses are
how are the
that's
LLM
wonky.
parts licensed? Do you know how yours are?
So this is a question.
That's like a whole topic for a different podcast,
I mean,
right?
but it's not all that different from when you go grab images off of an internet search. Are they copyrighted or are they Creative Commons?
Exactly, because this is a third-party problem.
And how many people check?
Well, Lee, this is like your story number 1, right? Code of practice for cybersecurity of AI.
Yeah, that was actually was kind of an interesting thing because we kind of danced around that subject a little bit. I mean, the UK is out there saying, look, we need to come up with some practices for securing AI, and so that people know if you follow these things, we're confident in how it's working. It's actually, this is part 1 of a multi-step process to create a global standard. Hey, it's nice to see them start to work. There's also an implementation guide.
I like that approach. I don't agree with your number 2, Italy's approach of just blocking AI, right?
Well,
I like the UK's approach of offering guidance. I think is good. When we get into banning or blocking things, I just it doesn't. I don't agree with it. Like oftentimes, I don't agree with the banning or blocking.
I don't know that it's right at a country level. Try and spit that out. I think an individual corporation should definitely make a decision whether they want to allow Deepseek or not, because of they're responsible for their data. I mean, but Italy is getting into, it's really, to me, dovetails onto the whole EU data sovereignty, GDPR protection stuff. There's been a lot of cases, particularly out of, correct me if I'm wrong, John, Ireland. I think is where there's been a lot of stuff coming out where they're really trying to lock down on people not following GDPR, and I feel like Italy's just making a quick play in that direction. But my takeaway from this is really pay attention to what data you're putting into your LLM and where it is, and don't get in the middle of a data sovereignty fight. Do not do that.
We'll lose.
Pay attention to privacy, because I think we get it all wrong when it gets to legislation, and we're just like, look, we're going to ban TikTok. And I'm like, well, that's great, like, because Instagram basically does the same exact thing.
So does YouTube Shorts.
And also their privacy of their app is probably pretty close to TikTok. I mean, the difference being it's not owned by a Chinese company. Right. Yep. Okay. But there's tons of other Chinese companies that make apps that are similar to TikTok. So like the ban hammer doesn't. No, I don't think it drives us in the right direction.
And there's a whole bunch of Chinese companies that do the right thing and they do really good things.
Yeah, but that 2017's intelligence law in China really can kneecap them. Then that's the one that says you got to give me my data if I want it. And I'm not saying those companies don't have integrity and aren't working well and all that, but they can be ended around.
Lee, don't we essentially have the same thing with the national security letters, where anybody in America has to hand over the data if the government really wants it?
Well, I was going to say, but I don't think that was unique to China. But Sam, you said it way better than I was going to say it. It's you need to know where that exists actually, and I don't, and make a conscious, informed decision. That's like with that database issue with Deepseek. There was a lot of data that was like payment information and personal contact information that was accessible. So, I mean, if you've got API keys that were in there, you probably want to change them. If you had a payment method in there, you might want to update that because that probably got out. That doesn't mean stop using the service. Okay, you might want to make sure it's repaired, but okay, then you still have, your use case still exists. It's just you have a data compromise risk, right? Go clean up, take the right steps. I'm kind of nervous that the adoption rate's a little high on DeepSeek, but maybe this is a good object lessons for other things out there that we're not paying as much attention to. Maybe like the AI security practices out of the UK, driving some better behavior so that in total we'll be in a better spot when we get through this gauntlet. And there I am being very Pollyanna. I apologize, but I like optimism.
Deploying enterprise AI, tools like Copilot from Microsoft 365 and Glean are prone to oversharing and data leakage. They lack the in-depth access controls required to ensure that query responses align with users' need to know boundaries. Without proper access controls, these tools accelerate the discovery of improperly secured sensitive files within the organization's M365 environment. Gnostic enables enterprises to safely adopt AI through setting need-to-know based access controls. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Gnostic and see how Gnostic can help stop AI oversharing. My next topic is something that now I'm violating now I'm going against script. I'm going against script. Jumping the script.
It's gonna hurt, sir.
4 demerits.
Yep.
4 demerits. It's out.
40 lashes with a wet noodle.
That's it. I'm gonna take the
Enjoy
demerit
that.
because I really want to talk about signature validation bypasses. And I didn't put the other story in there, but there's actually 2 this week.
Is this the AMD one?
Yeah, seemingly unrelated. So Supermicro released 3 CVEs that they patched that were Alexander Tereshkin. I can never pronounce his last name. He's a security researcher for NVIDIA. Found some vulnerabilities in Supermicro's implementation of BMC, which is based on OpenBMC, that allows for in 3 different vulnerabilities the bypass of firmware signature validation.
That's bad.
So what that means is an attacker can create their own custom firmware or modified firmware and get that to be applied to the compute device.
Oh my God! Combine that with the Watchtower article. Oh dear Lord!
Yeah, right?
Oh dear Lord!
We'll have to go there next.
We'll have to go there next, right? So I'm just playing out these. So we're talking about BMCs for a moment. I'm just playing this scenario out in my head. Supermicro makes a ton of different boards. In fact, they list all of them that are vulnerable, and they make really awesome boards. By the way, they're super for servers. Like they're super awesome.
They make some of the nicest small servers as well. Like they're awesome.
Yeah, dude. Like they make great stuff. But if an attacker can basically backdoor firmware that gets on a BMC, they own that server. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If it were a human brain, there would be an implant in the brain that controlled the entire brain. That is the BMC in the context of the computer. Like literally it has hardware tentacles that go into all the other pieces of hardware. It is the lowest level of access to hardware and firmware on a computer system.
Hardware Hydra.
Yeah. It's
based on a conversation that we had earlier, Mandy, I think your BMC is fascinating.
It's
Or brain management control system.
Yes.
Thank you. I will take that. Thank you.
So, and it's interesting that we also had a signature validation bypass on AMD devices. And these are AMD CPUs, and particularly in the microcode. And some people, I think there was an article from the Register or whatever, and I'm like, you're getting this wrong. Like, first of all, this was leaked like January 21st, I want to say, where Tavis Ormandi, I believe, was the one that spotted it first. And he was like, hey, Asus released I think it was a UEFI update that had a microcode patch in it that fixed a signature validation issue with the microcode. And he's like, hold on, stop the presses. If someone's patching a signature validation issue in a microcode patch for AMD, that means that's something we didn't know about. And lo and behold, this week, we get the fix for this signature validation. It was actually disclosed by Google, and Google put together a proof of concept. Now, the proof of concept just changes things like a random number primitive or function in the microcode to always return 4 as just a proof of concept. What it really allows, I thought Demi from Invisible Things has done research in this type of stuff for a really long time. And Demi weighed in on the sec lists. I don't remember which mailing list it was, full disclosure or not, but she says that since microcode loading can hopefully be done in Ring 0 and SVM root mode, this means that one needs OS level kernel access to perform the exploit. That to me is accurate. in order to get microcode on there, you do need a very high level inside of the kernel. Also, what prevents attackers from just slipping in any microcode they want to change how the CPU functions, essentially, is signature validation. And these are basically keys that are fused onto the CPU. Like, there's no external fuse for that. This is all inside of your CPU. There's an internal fuse that's holding a key that does part of that signature validation. But as we all know, with cryptography, cryptographic system, there's a lot of different ways to bypass that, right? Vulnerability, buffer overflow here or there, and you can get around that. So let's explore. If an attacker can load arbitrary microcode, they could compromise SMM, SEV, SNP, and DRTM. I'm not sure what DRTM is.
I'm not sure what any of those are, but okay.
In this context. SMM is system management mode, which is the highest privilege mode for the CPU. We did a whole segment on it with Jesse Michael, my coworker from Eclipsium, a couple of years ago. Right, like basically all processing stops. It does CPU level, low level functions in system management mode. It's highly protected. Okay. System management mode has access to things like SMRAM, system management RAM, which is protected areas of regions of memory that hold critical values and functions. So that's bad. Also, so AMD SEV SNP is AMD Secure Encrypted Virtualization, Secure Nested Paging. Basically protects memory in the context of virtualization. So a great example of this in a cloud provider environment, it's what protects your tenant from the next tenant in this context.
i.e. VM escape type stuff. Yeah.
Correct. So this one is pretty bad, in my opinion. I think it's they tried to paint it not as bad. I think it's kind of bad. I think one of our saving graces is when I looked at the affected processors, because then like my next question was, am I vulnerable on my AMD systems? I think it's only their like higher end EYPC processors that are vulnerable to this.
Epic, EPYC.
What did I say?
I think it's EPYC. You said EYPC.
Well, I forget what that stands for too. AMD is like so many acronyms.
It sounds out epic, and basically that's what they wanted to say.
Okay. I forget what it stands for something. I forget what it stands for.
Was this Sam's story that was talking about getting a random number generator always spit out 4?
Yeah.
This is the same one. Okay.
Yep.
Same one.
All right.
Also on March 5th, they claim to release more code. So we'll get better proof of concepts coming up, giving people time to patch these. Absolutely apply this patch. You do not want attackers loading arbitrary microcode. Like that's a really bad day. Also, usually Linux-firmware package in Linux will apply microcode updates. In this case, I read somewhere that it wasn't able to do that, and I'm not sure exactly why. But I think I've said it I've definitely said it on the show before, right? Zenbleed was one of the AMD vulnerabilities that was fixed by Linux-firmware microcode update. And microcode updates they're wonky. So we have a detection for this in our product, right? But it's not easy to navigate these waters. Like there are commands you can run in Linux, for example, that look at CPU info, and you can parse certain things from there and get your microcode version, and it looks like a hex string. And then you have to take that hex string, and whether it's Intel or AMD, and do some math with it or massaging of it to then go figure out what actual version of microcode I'm at, and then what fix for the CPU, which in the case of AMD is called a GISA, which is like their software suite for fixing code that runs on their CPU or lots of other platform security kind of things, right? That's going to be actually replaced by an open source initiative they called OpenSIL, which will, starting this year, be included on AMD processors moving forward. So it's just super hard. Like I can give you the commands on Linux to go figure out what your hardware will spit back as your microcode version, but it's a huge pain in the butt to figure out, do I need to update, and what update do I need to apply? Depends on which processor I'm running and how the OEM might decide that updated on my platform, right?
So I think you've already implied the answer to this. Is there some way to verify the integrity of your microcode?
That's a great question.
There is. They're mostly not that great.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you would.
You should only download it from trusted S3 buckets.
Yeah.
Don't go there. No, there's
No, we'll go there next.
Well,
go there
ideally, Sam, if there was no vulnerabilities, only validated microcode will install on your CPU, right?
Yeah, well,
but if
we
there's
all know how well-
vulnerabilities, now we
yeah.
got a problem.
Yeah.
no,
Besides, there's like SFC in Windows, System File Checker, because they know it could get corrupt, and there ought to be some way to verify your microcode. But from what you're saying, I don't think the industry is that mature yet.
well, here's
Yeah, it's like, how do we verify the verification process, right? Like, how many levels of verification?
The compiler and the compiler.
Yeah, it's like that's that's a tricky
this-
problem.
Well, it's
There
the
are
same with
companies-
SFC or antivirus. You trust it because it comes from a different company. I mean, your verification tool, you assume that's not compromised. Otherwise, we'll all go mad.
Sam, you want the bad news?
Sure.
The only ones that I've come across that are trying to do something like that are all blockchain based,
What's
Oh,
bad about
boy,
that?
here we
That's
go.
great news.
which is, I mean, to an
Oh,
extent,
you're getting Sam fired up. You said blockchain.
That would be the logical way to really make it trustworthy.
no, I agreed, except you're talking about something that for microcode is a little heavy. Okay. And I mean, think about the devices that use microcode. Do they have the capacity to, I mean, Larry, was it you that
Well,
said
you don't need that
there's-
device. That device doesn't need to have the blockchain. Just your verification tool needs to load the correct hash values off the blockchain. That's not a bad idea.
It's possible.
Yeah.
You know what? I actually just got talked to by one of those companies. Sam, I'll introduce you to them. How's that sound? You can tell me what you
Sure.
think.
So
Sure.
I got a tinfoil hat question. As we're talking about, the firmware and the microcode updates, I'm remembering used to be back in the day we had rules about clearing computers, which included, because of the times for things like memory to drain, powering off, hard off for a period of interval. And I'm thinking, with all these updates, I mean, we're getting a lot of firmware updates.
Fuck yeah.
Is a reboot good enough?
No.
Or should I be power cycling? And I'm thinking the latter, but I feel like maybe I just got too much tinfoil wrapped on my head right now.
Remember, pull the power cord out of the wall, lick it, stick it back in, pull it out, lick it, stick it back in. Keep doing that until you hear sparks come out and the magic smoke releases. Then you know the microcode update took.
Ah, okay. Well, when I see the rainbows coming out of the backside of my unicorn, I know I'm good.
I mean, ideally, you should be able to run commands and verify the version of your microcode at least changed, right?
Yeah,
is
I
one,
get that.
Is one way. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did in the case of AMD. Again, with ZenBleed, I was like, it's super hard to figure out, like, what version does that represent? I'm like, all right, hold on. Let me do either INCSI command or I think it's head-n7 //proc/CPU info gives you the block from CPU info that tells you you're running an AMD processor and it's this microcode. Do that,
And you're
then apply your updates,
nerd.
reboot, then go in and run that same command again. If it changed, at least that's some validation. Not great, but
Year
some
of Linux
validation.
desktop, baby. Year of the Linux desktop.
In Windows, it's in the registry, so you can query a registry key and get the same thing.
what's that
I don't
command?
know the registry key off the top of my head, but it was in our communication to customers that went out today. So that's the only reason I know all that crap off the top of my head is because it's my day job. it's my job to know that stuff, Josh.
and Perplexity read it for you in the head review.
No, you know what's funny? I went back to my own cheat sheet. I was like, wait, I've done this before. It's in my cheat sheet for Linux.
That's the best,
right?
That's the best.
Go back to my own cheat sheet.
Do you know how many times I've gone back to my own sand slides?
Yeah. Documentation is
Often.
important.
Often.
Yeah. Yes.
I know I wrote this 6 years ago, but I can't remember a damn thing. Let me go check my notes.
Yep. So,
while we're on CPUs, you want to talk about ESP32 a little bit?
Ooh, yes, please.
Sure.
I think he had a request in there.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that, seeing as how we're talking about, trusted updates and trusting where you get your stuff from.
So that's my article that'll publish, I believe, on Friday now.
Oh, no, I was talking about the article from Watchtower.
Oh, well, before we get there, really quick, and this will help condense the ESP32 conversation because I could spend a lot of time on it because I did write an article on it. And I believe some of that was based on a couple things. Larry, you and I talking on the show, and somehow me specifically remembering asking about, like, can code run directly on the hardware or do you need an operating system and what kind of operating system it is?
Yep.
And I did like more research
to
than
dig
what
it
to
into that.
do. Yeah,
Hey,
to
turns
do
out there's
that.
a lot of free RTOS.
Also, Jay Beal asking me the question at ShmooCon.
Yep.
Like, hey, what's the bootloader? And so that just was, I'm like, all right, now I need to know answers to these questions. So to answer the question, try and do this succinctly. When you have an ESP32, there's a development framework called ESP IDF, which is Espressive Systems Integrated Development Framework, which is like the lowest level framework in code libraries that you can get for programming the ESP32. It allows you full control. It basically allows you to compile a binary that runs directly on the hardware without a real-time operating system. In certain applications, you should do that, but it's very specific, and you have no help from a lot of other external libraries. So you basically have to write all the code yourself. So like if you look at the examples that an LLM spit out for me, like just to make an LED blink was like lots and lots of lines of code. But if you're using an Arduino library, it's much less code, and that's because you can do ESP IDF with free RTOS, or the real-time operating system compiled and loaded into it. That, when you do ESP IDF, gives you a multitasking free RTOS that you can write code that does, the multitasking. Then when you go to Arduino, it does use free RTOS, but it's single-threaded and makes available lots of libraries. So to like blink an LED on the board, it doesn't take much code at all, because all those libraries and the operating system is taking care of that for you. So all those options are available. The bootloader, you can, if you're using ESP IDF, you can modify the bootloader directly. And it's in bootloader specifically from Espressive Systems that boot. So the boot ROM basically initializes the hardware, similar to like UEFI, right? So it's stored, it's a permanent chip on your ESP32 boot ROM, does specific things to initialize the hardware, and then basically calls a block on the SPI flash and goes, that's where my bootloader should be. I'm going to boot my bootloader. In the ESP IDF, you can actually modify the bootloader to enable things like secure boot and flash and firmware encryption as well, which stores the keys in eFuses. So, Jay, there's the answer to your question. Larry, there's the answer to our collective questions of, wait, does it run an operating system? I'm like, oh, now I get it. So, and my article will come out Friday that it touches on that, but also Larry and Bill's project for the AirTag scanner, my kind of fork of that, in addition to some things you need to know in some further kind of call to action for our community on how you do security and supply chain security for the ESP32 platforms, which my concern is we're going to a web interface, we're plugging in our devices, and it's popping firmware on there, and we have no great way to validate that firmware. Back to our discussion of validation and signatures. We're largely not enabling secure boot on our ESP32 devices. The reason being, once you enable secure boot, it's put the configuration option is in the first eFuse. It's in eFuse 0 on the board, and you can't disable it. So every subsequent firmware update has to be signed and valid with the key that's stored in, I think it's sector the second eFuse, or the one slot eFuse. So that would be bad. So they're like, well, if you fail validation or something messes up, just put a new chip on it, because the chips are like $1 or $2 or whatever, right? And I'm like, oh, I get this now. It's an IoT, application. We're not, putting out thousands of dollars for a workstation where you're like, oh, I just can't throw the whole thing out, right?
Yeah, you can.
ESP32, it's $1, so that's one of the ways to do it. But in any case, that article should publish on Friday, and I'm super excited.
And to wrap us up on our ESP32 stuff, I had a story in there. Espressive is, quote, after 6 years, finally releasing a dual band Wi-Fi chip between 2.4 and
we covered that when you weren't
gigahertz.
here, and it's worth mentioning again that I think since then, Larry, some more people have seen prototype boards, which is encouraging that this will actually be released, because like you said, Larry, it's been a long time. So
and that said, just so you probably, if you did mention it, it may have been the article from Hackaday. And if you haven't checked out Andreas Spice's
awesome
YouTube channel,
yeah,
you should
love that channel.
do that.
Also, you will need to recompile your code for the RISC-V based ESP32s.
All right.
Oh, Watchtower.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Their article awesome.
Oh my
Oh,
god.
It's honestly so beautiful.
I just want to call it. I was a fan before they were famous. All right. It's like, when you follow that band in college and then they end up being like the big, it ends up being Nirvana, right? And you're like, I saw them play in a small, high school venue. That's kind of, I feel like with Watchtower. I'm like,
So-
I love their posts since day one.
So
They're just great.
their blog post is called "Ill-Advised Adventures." 8 million requests later, we made the SolarWinds supply chain attack look amateur.
Okay, should we summarize?
Yes. So
I mean, the article seems like FUD, but once you read the article,
No,
it's
it's
not.
but
fucking legit.
so
Yep.
so the long story short, they leveraged some data within the Watchtower platform. They did some more distillation of some of that data. And what they found were that they were a segment of markets that they, quote, targeted along the lines of
World.
Fortune 500, Fortune 100, a couple of others in various verticals and so forth. And basically what they found was that these sites had a bunch of links that went to Amazon S3 buckets that were defunct,
Abandoned.
abandoned, and or no longer existed, had been deleted.
Right.
More importantly, had not abandoned, had been
Yeah.
deleted.
I'm
Well, they were
Curious
they
on
were,
this
they were
issue.
abandoned and
I created an S3 bucket. It's associated with my account.
Yep.
I either close my account or delete the bucket.
You delete, or you delete the bucket.
Mhm.
and the bucket's
But
gone.
so
once you
how
close
is
the
it?
account.
How is it still? How is someone able to re-register that
No,
bucket?
whoa,
It's just a
whoa,
name.
whoa. Okay, so I'm a security appliance. I got bought from security vendor A, right? I have hard coded in me to call out to this bucket for
Oh,
updates.
okay.
So they're
And
looking at the
a
internet.
bucket. A bucket in that case is just namespace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I'm calling out for updates every 3 days, week, whatever it is. They listen
Delete
to
the
some
bucket.
traffic on the internet and go, something's calling this bucket that doesn't exist.
Mhm.
Let's register that namespace
Yep.
and see
Oh.
what.
So what do you do? I think you create a new bucket and then
Yep.
you can rename it to
Right.
different
Yeah.
to that namespace.
Yep.
Is what I've
Sam,
played
I'd
with
like
to-
S3
I'd like
buckets
to-
like a little bit.
I'd like to understand this, Paul. This is what struck me.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Amazon namespaces just have this long random number? Why isn't that like a product key where they never reuse the number?
Why do
Why
they
would
care?
they let you buy a number that somebody else already used? That seems like the fundamental flaw here.
Yeah. Well, so it's not so much that they're buying the number. It's like the tiny URL that references that number that's getting re-registered.
Oh, so I have in some form or fashion gotten access to a channel of communication that one endpoint of it was destroyed.
Yep.
And so I can now take over that channel of communication. Now I've got
It very reminds me of some of the things like we used to see with C2 servers. Like all of a sudden we stand up, somebody stands up C2, it goes to domain-example.com, and then domain-example.com registration expires, so someone else goes and renews it. And now all of the C2 traffic is going to whoever the new register.
Or-
This is effectively what's happening.
Or a
with
variation of that is securityfail.com.
Yeah.
Part of,
At one time, Larry and I owned securityfail.com. We were using it for a place for people to describe heinous things that vulnerabilities found on routers.
Yep.
And then it was being attacked so often because of the name. And I don't know if people were just trying to ruse Larry and I, that Larry and I were like, this isn't worth keeping around. People
Just
aren't
keep getting
using it
hacked.
for the intended purpose. People are just attacking it. And so we took down the server. But we left the DNS record there.
Mhm.
And what happened was someone registered a new virtual server instance and got reissued that IP address.
oh,
And then at that time, they were essentially securityfail.com.
Yep. This is
Oh,
effectively what has happened there.
And this is very
'cause
similar.
I was
to that.
thinking this came back to the fact that bucket names are global; they're not private.
Yes,
so
that's
that
correct.
Yeah, they're
that
not
if you-
contextualized in the organization. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
great
So
point.
if I create Lee's bucket and get rid of it, and Larry creates Lee's bucket It's
I am now
effectively
the
the
owner of
same
Lee's
address.
bucket. Yeah, and all those URLs that point to Lee's bucket now point to my bucket.
Bingo. And then
So
There was
so-
innuendo there that I was not comfortable with. But
yeah. So the
lot of
more on the
buckets
the more on the high level, Watchtower registered a whole bunch of these global names for a bunch of these deleted, abandoned S3 buckets that were still having data pointed to them. And they got more than 8 million HTTP requests over a 2-month period for all sorts of things such as software updates, precompiled, unsigned Windows, Linux, and Mac OS binaries, virtual machine images, JavaScript files, cloud formation templates, SSL VPN server configurations, and a whole bunch more of stuff.
I want
here's your sign.
And receiving requests from reverse DNS lookups based for government networks based in the USA, including NASA, numerous laboratory state governments,
and
UK, Poland, Australia, South Korea, Turkey, Taiwan, Chile, etc., military networks, Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s, quote, major payment card network, major industrial product company, global and regional banks and financial services, universities around the world, instant messenger software companies, cybersecurity technology companies, LOL, casinos, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I want to point out that forgotten infrastructure has been a problem for a long, blessed time. Does
Yes.
anybody remember Heartland?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And the FTP server they forgot about. I mean, like, this has been a
Yep.
problem for a very long time. And it's so simple. It's like, did you properly change all of the references and age out all the references to that bucket before you deleted it? No. Well, then guess what?
No.
You're causing a security problem. Screw your O-Day, man. Screw your O-Day. I'm just going to take over some Amazon buckets.
And Josh, it was interesting, and through their analysis, in some of the cases, it wasn't. So they deleted the bucket, but it was tied to an open source project that has been either deprecated, no longer supported, but the code is still out there and people are using it. And those that open source stuff was either hosted at that bucket that is no longer there because the project was deprecated.
And
then
add to
yeah,
it that
and
then you go into that project, find it's got a bucket name in it that may not exist that you could go create and see what you could do to people.
exactly, and that's exactly what they did.
And it's it's
They
different
definitely
than when
fixed
you
the heat,
used to
by the
forget
way,
a
too.
server in your back room that wasn't necessarily on the
FYI.
internet, because this is now global and oh my goodness, yes,
Yeah.
far more
So
insidious.
They found a whole bunch of scenarios as part of this article, and each one of them they assigned an individual danger level. And the first one was poisoned JavaScript danger level. North Koreans will use your web browser to mine crypto. It might catch fire. So basically, JavaScript.
Wait, your browser or your computer might catch fire?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, your browser might catch fire too because it's in the computer, man.
It's in, what is this, Tron?
Yeah. But so they found one that effectively there were projects going out there and websites going out there to load JavaScript content from that bucket, as opposed to just putting it on your own site. No, the project says, "Oh, just go get it from our bucket over here, and you just can. We'll host it for you." Yeah. This is the echo chamber JavaScript. The next danger level was CISA secure by wrong patches. Danger level. CISA will tell you to install security patches that send your hard drive contents to APTs or Watchtower. CISA had a couple of reports, one from a 2012 ICS of advisory that says, go to this bucket and download this Windows executable.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, fine, but like, don't ever unregister the bucket.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it was CISA's bucket.
Oh,
exactly. Right. Exactly. All right. Next danger level, sloppy, not brilliant, and so much to read into, but perhaps not the end of the world. This one is a major antivirus vendor's Linux server agent. Yeah. Hey, you want to download our Linux server agent? Go download it from here at this bucket. Or updates.
Evil grade.
Yep.
I like how we should be using the cloud. S3 is awesome for serving files. We should do that. And then they're like, wow, we got the bill. It's really high. We should probably host that somewhere else.
Yeah.
And then here we are.
The next danger level for just pipe it to bash. The danger level is please don't do this. We keep telling you not to do this. Please don't do this. Yeah. Go get a script to do your installer. In this case, AE5 Conda latest, the Linux install script, is it an AWS bucket and it's an S3 bucket? And then they tell you to pipe it to bash.
I hate
curl
that.
to pipe it to
Yeah,
bash.
I hate the curl to pipe to bash. It's right up there with I go to a website and I load firmware on my device by clicking a button.
Yep.
Same thing.
Okay, next one. Major SSL VPN appliance vendor. Danger level. We swear we did not go looking for anything to do with SSL VPNs. And once again, we're stuck talking about SSL VPNs. So a couple of SSL appliance vendors with their default configurations and so forth. Tons of stuff there. Major appliance vendor number 2, configurations, many buckets. Yeah. All right, next one. Oh, wait a minute. Virtual machines with no integrity. Danger level. Come on, this is ridiculous. Okay. So yeah. What's more questionable than pulling CloudFormation template from an untrusted location? What about pulling the entire virtual machine images out of a
What could possibly go wrong?
So not only did they find CloudFormation stuff like, hey, go build this virtual machine using these directions.
I mean,
on a deleted bucket. Well, now was go get a whole virtual machine images. And I think the last one was a Twilight for Sparkle. Danger level not so bad until you read to the very end, and then it makes you wonder why you bother trying to secure things at all.
I just love can I just read the first couple of sentences?
Yes.
Because this is something that we try to do collectively, those of us that know this either in your presentations or article.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that Jason Blanchard really truly helped me understand, Michael Santarcangelo too, is you need a hook.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you're producing content, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a presentation or an article, you need a hook. So your very first things that you write or say should be engaging in it. That should be your hook. And what is your hook? It's why we start this show with, here's what we're going to talk about, because that's our hook for the podcast. The hook for this article, which it got me, right? Surprise, surprise, we've done it again. We've demonstrated an ability to compromise significantly sensitive networks, including governments, military, space agencies, cybersecurity companies, supply chain, software development systems and environments, and more. That's engaging in and of itself. That's a great hook. They follow that up with something funny, which is often a good thing to include in your hook. They say, ugh, won't they just stick to creating poor quality memes? We hear you moan. Maybe we should. Maybe we shouldn't. Regardless, it's too late at this stage, so we have to live with it. That is... Love their writing and presentation.
For those of you who enjoy our research, to the PCERT and CERT teams who dread an email originating from watchtower.com, you are likely aware that we've historically delivered research that's shown a spotlight on the security impact of abandoned infrastructure in various forms.
Right. And then they also vowed not to create any more research that talks about abandoned infrastructure, because this is their fourth piece of research? Third.
Yes.
Third piece of research.
And in fact, they said, before you ask, for many reasons, after this research is published, we're absolutely vowing not to touch the subject of abandoned infrastructure again publicly.
Notice they said publicly.
And number two,
but also, I imagine the hook for their next article, like 2 years from now, is, hey, remember when we said we wouldn't publish it publicly?
We've beaten this proverbial horse to death in 3 different ways, and frankly, we don't want to completely lose faith in the internet.
Right. I literally next year they're going to be like, so we've lost even more faith in the internet, and now we have to publish this fourth one. I'm totally expecting that.
Well, you realize the research they did AWS S3 buckets. They did not do.
What about Google? Google buckets.
They did not do Google. What does Google call them? Buckets? I don't remember.
Google Cloud Storage buckets, I believe, is the term for them.
And by the way, do you know how many cloud vendors there are besides the big 3?
Oh yeah, you got Linode, you got DigitalOcean.
There's about
Rackspace. I think Rackspace is still is still a thing.
Akamai.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Akamai bought Linode, so Linode is part of Akamai now.
Yes, but they also run,
and they also have their own
Akamai cloud.
Now there's Cloudflare.
Yeah,
right?
Cloudflare.
There's like 50 different cloud providers. So, you know, they got AWS buckets. There's only 52 or 5 or whatever it is left to touch for abandoned infrastructure. Oh, yay.
Yeah, I do have to say the tools in the infrastructure for managing GCP things is just wonky. And I've heard some people say that, and then I had to do it myself, and I was like, wow, that is the most ass backwards. Like, good Lord, if you're not an experienced engineer, good luck figuring that shit out. Like, holy crap. It was bad. I'm sorry, Google, but it was not a great user experience. AWS was a much better user experience, even though the documentation is all over the place, and there's it's like Perl. There's at least 6 ways or 8 ways to do one thing. AWS is still a better user experience than the GCP bucket thing.
So to move us along and to wrap us up on this one,
I'm just king of tangents.
Great line here from their stuff. As for the research itself, cost them about $400, and it panned out progressively with S3 buckets registered as they were discovered. It went rather quickly from, we could put our logo on this website to .mil. We should probably speak to someone. Yeah, it is a long read.
It is very long.
It is a very long
but
read,
very much worth it.
Very much worth it. And they did not do any of the compromise. They merely theorized about some of the things that they were seeing and verified that these could be bad things, and this could. Here's what the attack path for this stuff could be, but we're not evil. So,
IT professionals, mark your calendars. Zero Trust World 2025 is happening in Orlando, Florida, February 19th to the 21st. This event is tailored for IT leaders and cybersecurity experts who want actionable insights on zero trust strategies, practical solutions for modern threats, and meaningful connections with industry peers. Plus, take advantage of hands-on cyber hero boot camps, expert-led sessions, and the chance to earn CPE credits and your cyber hero certificate. Save $200 on your in-person registration using discount code ZTWSW25 at securityweekly.com/ZTW2025. Reserve your spot now. In our new setup that we're going to talk about after the show, I could show you some of the memes, but for now, you have to go to the show notes.
Yep. Danger level. Come on, this is ridiculous. And like I just now noticed that image, Paul. Go back to that.
Oh, to this one?
Yeah, it's the
DevOps image
it's
in
the DevOps life cycle. Yep. And like I just because like I see
code
this
build test get popped, deploy, operate, monitor, plan, code build test get popped.
Yep. And I see this all day, every day, and I didn't even notice that right in the middle it says get popped. Like
I love it. I love their post so much that last year I sent who's the founder and CEO a message, and I was just like, we appreciate you. Like I really like if people, I know people give you crap, like especially vendors give you crap, but I'm just
straight up, we
from the heart.
You.
Like we appreciate you. Keep up the great work. Let us know how we can help and support because they're doing God's work. Publishing exploits too. I found a neat tool that lets you search exploits. This is kind of the bane of my existence. Tools that, and I've gone through so many, right? Like they're kind of like disposable now because someone will create a great tool that allows you to search and or query the various vulnerability databases and or the various exploit databases, which is useful for pen testers, useful for security researchers, useful for people like me that have to do threat intelligence and threat landscape analysis. I would say is my role, right? And so like having a tool like that, I've used a lot of them very effectively, mind you, but then they'll stop working because the person abandoned the project, didn't keep it up to date. The API changed. I've seen ones that scrape other websites like OpenCVE.io. I think is that the website? OpenCVE.io. It was actually scraping that website, but the OpenCVE.io changed the format of their HTML and JavaScript, and therefore that scraping didn't work any longer. And so this is my latest project that I found. It's called Go Exploit DB. It's a tool that allows you to, it looks like fetch and search exploit DB, GitHub repositories, awesome CVE, POC, and in the wild DB. In the wild DB is a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a GitHub or is that? Well, they do have a GitHub. I consume that as a website. That's interesting. Use verified up-to-date data of inthewild.io. Yeah, inthewild.io is a pretty good one. And so it's written in Go and allows you to query all that stuff. I just started playing around with it, and then we had operational issues here in the studio. So I was hoping to have some more testing done of this. But yeah, I think what I'm coming down to is my next coding project will be to write and maintain something that allows you to easily query CVE databases and exploit databases. There's certainly enough code examples out there. You just gotta, put something together. You don't have to write all the code yourself. You could borrow what you like from so many different projects and look at their approach, which is where I was almost going to do this, and then I got distracted with ESP32 coding. But this needs to be done. We need to maintain something that allows you to do this more easily.
Wait.
To search for a product. I mean, so
There's
you want to search for a product, Josh, right? I want to know. Like, I have to write ridiculously hacked code to go, all right, for a given
binary.
product. I can't use the examples that are popping in my head because it might give too much away.
For any given binary.
For any given product, like give me a product that you'd want to know what vulnerabilities are out there. Any product.
Checkpoint firewall.
Yeah. For checkpoint firewalls, for this, what is their firewall? Well, it was Firewall 1 back in the day.
Yeah.
But
use that. Who cares?
For like a given checkpoint product, I want to know every single CVE that's ever been published. I want to know the CVSS scores of all of those, right? So, you can't query the direct CVE. Now you got to do NVD because you got to get a CVSS score. So it has to have been enriched. And then I want to know, are there exploits that have been published for that? Like, it's an easy question. The answer is much harder given all of these data sources that are kind of all over the place.
Well, this was supposed to be the SBOM world where you could just grab an SBOM and look at it, the VEX project, and see, okay, this product has this software, which has these vulnerabilities, and boom, you've got it all in one place.
Hey, I know a product that does that.
CPEs are specific to a version, right?
But here's
I've seen some that enumerate all the CPEs and then query all the databases for 15 different CPEs because there's 15 different versions. But then you've got the compounding problem of that product has changed names, Avanti.
Don't even
6 times.
Yeah, and
in
Enable and Kaseya and SolarWinds and version numbers that roll up into different service packs and hotfixes. But you've got an even more fundamental issue, which is a data source problem, which is, are we keeping up with CVEs? Do we have an NVD that is capable of keeping up with the avalanche of scoring, monitoring, maintaining?
No, we don't.
I don't think so.
So Leap, go ahead, please.
No, I was just agreeing with you. I'm thinking with the work CISA is doing, trying to get the enrichment and all that stuff done with the CVs, they hired a company to do it, and it was supposed to be done in September, right? And they're still struggling to keep up. I mean, I bless their hearts, they're not walking away, but it's a hard problem.
Yes, it is. And so we have a data source or an Oracle problem in the smart contract world. They call it an Oracle problem. It's a data source problem. We don't have the data sources with a reliable, consistent flow of data, new CVEs, new CVSS scores, et cetera, to feed those systems that you're talking about. And so while finite state actually has a way to do that, they also are subject to the same issue, which is, I'm not picking on them. It's not their fault. They are subject to the same issue, which is that CVEs are coming in dribs and drabs rather than the fire hose they should be.
Well, then you get the backlog. Like I just looked it up, right? There's over 240,000 publicly issued CVEs. How do we enrich and update all of that data? I spoke to the project lead, Alex Summers, of CVE.
Oh, did you? What did he say?
He's like, yes, this is a problem. They're doing the best they can. He's like, but we have a data problem. We've got hundreds of thousands of CVEs. Some of those were issued over 20 years ago. and the references are wrong. And he's like, yeah, we are going, there's multiple efforts to go back in and re-enrich or update this data, but it's a scale issue, right?
Huge scale issue.
Huge scale issue.
And the problem is also beyond scale. It's just that we're having a problem. Look, when they started naming vulnerabilities cutesy names, okay, poodle, crabs, whatever. Like it became, I don't know, fashionable. Like,
I mean, what's wrong with a little fashion? Says the person whose company released UEFI has buffer overflow.
But does it have a song? I didn't think so.
We got a song. We got a
Who's got a
we
song?
got a
Which
we got a social
vulnerabilities
networking
have
page.
songs?
Come on.
None of them yet. Oh, no, I think one of them had a song.
Oh, you're kidding.
I want to say there have at least one song.
Oh my God. MSO 8067. Is it MSO 8067?
No, they didn't have a song.
I'm sure someone that's like a great interview question.
Which
If MSO 8067 were to have a song, what song would it be?
Oh wow, that's a good question.
Like Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. It would be Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, that's true. Stairway to Freebird.
You're right.
No, I mean we have problems in our industry of we're not getting enough data into the CVE and CVSS databases, NVD. We're not utilizing the databases effectively. We're not acting as a community, as an industry, and everybody's trying to steal every bit of data they can for use in any way they can, which is one of the problems when you go to Hugging Face, for example, and you look at data sets, and there's a gazillion data sets, most of which are just scraped off some website somewhere. And they're trying to gain competitive advantage by scraping data sets instead of sharing, doing the right thing.
Well, I think part of the problem is, Josh, that much of it has been productized, though.
Well, yeah.
Like if I think of what I do when I don't find a vulnerability, but I find a disclosure of a vulnerability. The process in my brain, like the thought process and the actions that I take really could be automated, right? Like but most of the companies that are automating that are charging for it. So in other words, when I say I saw the AMD vulnerability, right? So the precursor to that, and then I started scouring, it's almost muscle memory at this point because I've done it for 20 years. I'm like, what else references that? Where else can I go look for that? I want to look at a mailing list here. I want to search my Feedly here. I want to go to GitHub and search for an exploit here. And then I end up with this list of, I don't know, 8 resources. And that can be automated, but a lot of it is automated via threat intelligence feeds that you gotta pay for. So that enrichment, right, is a hot commodity that people just aren't giving away. Right. So I'm tasked with doing that for my job. And then so when I go file a ticket, it's Paul's collection of things. Now I'm further enriching that for us, but that could be automated too. Because any given vulnerability for in a product or company that owns that product, I'm like, well, how there's factors that go into the impact of that vulnerability that require more research. I'm like, well, okay. How easy or difficult is it for someone to stand this up in a lab? Does it have an Amazon AMI image? Is there a free trial? Is it a paid for only product? Has someone broken the encryption on the appliance and or firmware image? What market share does that company have? But even better than that, how much market share does that product have from that company? Because all of us know, Cisco's, you ask Google or any LLM how much market share Cisco has, and they're like, oh, it has a shitload of market share. I'm like, okay, but what about that one-off product from Cisco that no one uses? It has no market share. So the market share of the company is almost irrelevant. It's the market share of the product. All of that are factors into the impact and or severity, more so the impact of that vulnerability. Right, that determine our response. So whether you're a defender, whether you're a product company, or what, these are all questions that you want to have answers to. I mean, in the context of a company, it might be for asset management, right? How much of it do I have in my own environment is an internal question, right? But for maybe a product company or research company, how common is this on the internet? How many hits on Shodan does it have?
Exactly.
Yeah. So the question
So
is,
Lee and I did some research.
yeah, we did.
How many vulnerabilities have a song?
Yeah.
I came up with
That's a good one, but that's a good one
CVE
too. I almost want to include that. Go ahead,
Yep.
Lee.
And quite honest,
2022 38392.
38392. And in fact, Lee, I'll argue with this one. This one doesn't have a song. It was actually caused by a song.
Yeah, I know. But it was as close as I could
Oh, I
get.
remember this one now. What
Yep.
was the...
It was
certain 5400 RPM hard drives for laptops
Yes.
and other PCs in approximately 2005 or later allow physically proximate attackers to use denial of service, device malfunction, system crash via resident frequency attack with the audio signal from the Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation music video.
It's like one of the best vulnerabilities ever.
Yes.
I mean that has to be...
And what Rhythm Nation came out like 16 years before. I mean, I remember when that album came out. I think I had a copy, and it was like, wait a minute,
1989.
Oh, you beat me to it.
I did have a copy of that.
And in the original article from the registry that showed up, few modern machines have hard disk drives, never mind drives that rotate at unfashionably slow speed of 5,400 revolutions per minute. Also, hardly anybody listens to Janet Jackson anymore.
Well, in '89, a lot of people did, but
I did. But this CVE was from 2022.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of a weird connection. I mean, odd claim to fame. So, I mean, my other reaction to this whole thing was: so is Paul making a pitch for an LLM, or is he trying to keep the level 4 telephone sanitizers employed? You remember Doug Adams, where they got rid of those guys and the planet went to hell in a handbasket because they actually were useful functions.
Yeah.
Oh, I do remember that. Yes. I would an LLM is part of the maybe a highly trained LLM, but it's going to output a standard data format.
Oh, there you go.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
But also a lot of these tools that query the CVEs also do not output a standard data format. In fact, the one that I am currently using, I modified the source code to output a CSV
because reasons.
Because it didn't have that functionality. And I'm like, yeah, but once you're done, I need to parse that and I need to cross-reference that. Like I don't know. I end up doing a lot of that for just like reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I need my own tool is what I need.
Mm-hmm. Hey, speaking of doing things because reasons, there's a story that I think you'll find fascinating, Paul, for because reasons. My story number 5, specifically keygen.
Mm-hmm.
And I forget where I ended up finding the keygen one, but it was basically, and I did see this on an Adam Savage tested video where they talked about the flipper, and one of Adam's interns showed Adam what the flipper was. And one of the things that they demoed was, hey, you can take a key and you can line it up to the screen and you can get the various bitting and get the decode of the key. I'm like,
you can totally, I've seen videos like this.
And I'm like,
if you have the key,
you can decode the key.
You can 3D print it.
And you can 3D print it. But how do you know how to 3D? You have to go make your own model, right?
Correct.
No, you go to Keygen.
But this doesn't let me upload a picture.
You don't need to know a picture. You just need to know the bitting or the biting.
You basically
whatever the decoding is
that
you did
type,
with the flipper.
the outline, the wording, and then the bitting. I mean, it's
Oh, and how do you? Oh, I see. So what? So okay.
Yeah.
It explains it for you. It's specified from bow to tip, 0 through 9, with 0 being the shallowest cut and 9 being the deepest cut.
And that's what you recovered with the little app on the flipper because you lined it up on the screen. You go, oh, it's a 74310.
Oh, so there's apps that will take a look at your key and then.
Well, it won't look at it. You have to line it up on the screen and then you have to set the levels. But it decodes.
It's a tool it gives you the numbers of. You're right.
Yes, and then then you can 3D print a key, and I'm like, well, you got to go make a model, and they're like, oh no, just go here. And what type of lock is it? What type of key is it? How many pins? Which one of the multiple warding types for those types of locks is it?
Is the warding the groove?
It's the side grooves about which key fits in which hole.
Right.
And then it gives you a model. So put in 5 numbers to that. So Paul's at keygen.com right now. This would be awesome if we could show this. So, and then click generate.
It's generating.
Please wait.
Doesn't
In
take
future
long.
versions of the show, you'll be able to see this.
Yep. And now you can download an STL and you can go print that right on your.
No
on-
way.
Yes way.
That is so cool.
Seriously?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you
Seriously.
get the type and the options that
Yep,
go with it,
yeah.
and then just
The
get
default
bidding.
type is a Schlage Classic 5-pin with the C wording, which is arguably one of the most common locks
Sure,
on the
sure.
in the US.
The only thing that's missing is a little stamp that says "Do not duplicate."
Well, I mean,
You
we
could
have
modify
we-
the STL file.
Yeah, we have the model.
No,
And
no.
my thought, my thought was like, is this key actually going to be strong enough? And the
I have
answer
seen
is-
them when
and
they-
the
where they
answer-
are.
And the answer is yes.
Oh.
Well, is it?
I mean,
how many
you
times
can-
does it have to work?
Once.
Yeah, but you don't want it to break off in the
No,
in the lock.
I get
And
it.
My
The
what
look on- the look
what
on
little I
Josh's
know
face.
about 3D printing is, where do you? What's the setting called where you? It's like 0.2 millimeters between the layers. What is that called? The how many layers you're gonna
layer
print?
height. Your layer height.
Your layer height, right?
Mhm.
So your the default, like on a bamboo A1 mini printer, is 0.2 millimeters.
Yep.
Right. And then, but you can go in the menu, and you can go all the way down to, I don't know where you can go down. I don't print, like I do 0.18 sometimes.
Yep.
So you can basically add more layers to it, which increases the strength.
And your
And I
infill.
think my problem on my recent print is for printing the supports. Can you adjust the layer height for the supports versus the actual print itself? Because what I experienced was I decreased my layer height, which makes it stronger,
Mhm.
but my supports were like super hard to remove.
Yeah, because
Where I needed like my new drill thing that I bought
because arguably you need the layer because it's one layer height for that whole
for the whole
layer.
print.
So,
Yeah,
well, no, it's for that layer. So
Yeah.
you need to have the height of the support to be at the same layer.
to be the same. Yeah, it
Because
would
if
have
you-
to be the same.
Because if you print your support too high before you print the rest of it,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
could-
Then
it could
it's
bump into
right,
it.
right.
And then when you start talking curved surfaces, you
Mhm.
want to use the dynamic layer height
Right.
because it gets less of the jaggies.
Yep.
That's me. This.
Yes. Yeah. So so I'm printing something ridiculous. So it's it's on Maker World, but it's a flip phone. It looks like a gigantic flip phone,
Uh-huh.
but the inside, in the base of it, has a cutout for Flipper Zero, and then it has holes in the side for a charging port for the infrared and for something else in it. So it's got some access ports in it, but then
Uh-huh.
you 3D print both parts, and it has the antenna, and it has the top, and then you put a piece of filament in the hinges is what they recommend. So it flips up. So it's basically a gigantic.
It's a case for your flipper. That
It's
looks
a
like
case for your
phone.
flip phone that looks like a flip phone. And my first one did not come out great, and I had these artifacts in it. Hold on, I want to bring it up quick. I meant to send this to you, Larry. No.
In the meantime, we'll talk about amongst ourselves. Did you guys talk about the bamboo kerfuffle last week at all?
We did.
Okay, so I'll leave it.
But did you have? It looked like your story was different.
Yeah, so it was from Hackaday.
The guy that presented,
he
he presented at.
I don't know.
I don't want. No,
an application was a sole way to send third-party software to
Like,
send.
what is that? So
jobs.
there's the thing, right?
Yep.
That's the thing. What is that from?
Was that on the layer that was on the
base?
Yeah, probably an adhesion issue.
So like,
Yep, adhesion.
did I have the wrong temperature for my plate?
No, it should be pretty standard default. It was.
But what if I selected the wrong plate?
Yep.
That's kind of what I was thinking,
So-
because
so
I did
my-
switch from a textured PEI
Yep.
to the super cool
So mine
plate.
will tell you have the wrong plate.
Oh, interesting.
Yep. So, but then again, I have the X1 carbon.
Mhm.
That
What
may
about
have
that
that
fancy?
may have also been something stuck to the plate,
Mhm.
like a piece of dust or something that it went.
I just got
over.
the A1 Mini. Haven't even set it up yet.
You
It
should.
takes about 20 minutes. Not even. Actually, if I did, it'd probably take less time because I've set up 2 of them so far. you'll be up and running in no time.
Yeah, you'd have your X1 Carbon up in 20 minutes.
Just make sure your plates, Josh, buy some glue. Like really any kind of 3D printer plate glue will do. I've tried like 3 or 4 different kinds, and they're all great.
Okay.
And just put there's videos that show you how to put the glue on them. You definitely want 3D printer. That was Larry's suggestion. And
that's a great question. Was that so? You're looking at and there's like a little bump in it. Did you use glue on that?
I
plate?
did.
What glue did you use?
I think that was the Bamboo Labs.
Was it the glue stick?
It was the
liquid.
Okay. The liquid.
I was going to say, because it would have been the stick if you got like a little
crumble. Right.
That could have been from that. But
good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The glue is cheap, and if you don't have glue, like a glue stick will work. But again, to Larry's point, it'll kind of glob up. Like you got to be really careful how you apply the glue. But a glue stick definitely works.
Yeah. And the other tip, Josh, too, if you use the glue stick, I'm lazy. And I will spread the glue on the entire plate, and then I'll print something, and it only takes like little sections of the glue off. I will just take the glue stick and touch up those sections.
That's what the sections, yeah.
Right.
Or you can get away with that a couple of times.
You can also put the plate back on and heat it up, and then spread the glue out evenly too. Was some recommendations that I saw as well.
Yeah, it's true.
Paul Security Weekly is supported by Bitwarden, the trusted solution for password, passkey, and secrets management. Bitwarden empowers everyone to create and manage strong and unique credentials across all accounts and devices. With enterprise SSO integration, end-to-end encryption, and secure autofill capabilities, Bitwarden defends against phishing attacks and data breaches. Strengthen your security posture with tools built to protect what matters most. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Bitwarden.
So I was talking to a friend earlier today, and he said, "Yeah, have you gotten into 3D printing?" Which I haven't. And he says, I got a printer that was only at $200 to get started. And he sends me a link to the A1, which is more like $500 with all the sexy features. And it's like, damn it,
A1 minis are on sale now for $200.
Yeah, I got mine.
Again, this is a relatively recent endeavor. It's been on my bucket list for a long time.
It's beautiful.
And then it's for $200, dude. It's fantastic.
It's just
fantastic.
The link he sent me, it wasn't no $200, but
yeah, well, it may have been the A1 as a.
If you do
I have an AMS on one of them.
somewhere there.
Yeah, and the A1 and the A1 Mini are 2 different ones. Correct.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
An A1 Mini is fine. An A1 Mini is fine. I mean,
I'm
not
arguing that. I'm saying this thing looks so cool. I was like, damn it! Now I want to.
Yeah.
And people will poo-poo the Bamboo Labs because we talked about the firmware, right? Larry had a story about the firmware, the proprietary aspect of it. What I find is, like, if you want to go customize your Creality printer, great. I think that's awesome. Like, I had nothing but like
go buy an Ender Creality Ender. Like, you go do that. You know what?
I'm so happy for you. Like, and I'm so supportive of those efforts and customizing firmware and making add-ons. Like, I think that's absolutely wonderful. However, if you want your kids, like my thing was, if you want your kids to be 3D printing, a Bamboo Labs is the way to go. So I went over my son went over our friend's house. They had a Bamboo Labs A1 Mini, and they're not like techie people. I mean, they are, but they don't do what we do, right? They're not IT or software engineer, cybersecurity people. And he was printing all kinds of stuff. And I got one, and my kids print all kinds of stuff. In fact, I hate to show favoritism in kids, but my 8-year-old prints the coolest shit ever. Like, he is just like, he'll print, like, I'll walk in the office and there'll be something on the printer, I'll grab it for him, and I'm like, dude, what is that? Is like a really cool print. Like, I don't know where you found it, how you did that. Like, it is super cool stuff. Yep. And it provokes their imagination. My wife had to buy shelves from the store, all the crap on.
Yeah, that's what I got. That's exactly what I got the A1 Mini for. Is for me to start, and then I'm going to hand it over to the kids.
Yeah, and then you're going to go buy another one because 3D printers are like a lot of things, like podcasts. Like, once you have one, you're going to want more.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's seductive and cool. And I did find the 219.
Do you have a? So I'm going to give a tip to people. Lee, do you have a Micro Center anywhere near you?
Not
Or know a
I
friend
haven't
that's
looked
near
for
a-
one. So, but what's the
Why?
or a friend that lives near a Micro Center. Micro Center has them in stock for $200, and you can buy the warranty with it and get it like that day. I actually drove to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and picked up an A1 Mini.
You didn't pick
Oh,
up a
baby.
A1 Mini.
I think I picked up 2. I might have bought 2.
I thought you told me you bought.
No, I did.
4.
I bought 2.
No,
I bought 2, and there's 2 more. I will have ultimately 4, and one that's damaged, but we don't want to talk about that. But
I
Yeah.
have to admit I have ignorance in all the different types of filament, so I need to go do all the
well,
research.
I'll help you.
Go to,
I'll help you.
start with PLA and you know, let's put it this way: you plug the PLA in out of the box. You tell the Bamboo, "Hey, I'm using generic PLA," and you
it
tell it
just
to print.
prints. Yeah,
and
like pretty
and
much.
and it
I
fucking
know.
works.
What is PLA Plus? What is the?
It is stronger.
Okay,
Yep, it is allegedly
because
stronger.
I buy what's on sale, and some of it's PLA Plus.
You just tell the Bamboo printer what it is.
You can tell the printer
and
like
even-
it's PLA Plus,
and
and
like-
it sets the right temperature for it. Basically, is what
and
it's.
and I bought some generic color. We're getting into a 3D printer podcast.
Yeah,
But I bought some generic color change PLA off of Amazon that was reasonably
the
priced.
color change stuff is for the kids. Love that.
and
crap.
I bought it and I put it in the thing and it's like, we can't identify this. I'm like, great, it's some generic PLA. And they're like, great. And I started like a 12-hour print for something for my wife and
It worked fine.
I ended up printing like 12 of these things for my wife to give to everyone in her knitting group. They were yarn holders
Yeah,
with a little
sure.
hole on the side. So you put the ball in and it spins and like
yeah.
they did all these color change ones for everyone in the group. And
So
like-
when you say color change, like the color of the filament changes as it goes through,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they spool
it's like rainbow.
different.
Yeah.
It's a rainbow. Yeah,
I was
yeah.
thinking like does it change as you change the orientation, or so?
Oh,
No,
some
on the
of-
spool it changes colors.
They
Yeah.
they do make them the pearlescent color shift type of stuff. I haven't played with
Jesus
any of that.
Christ, this is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
You can get
it's amazing.
translucent.
Although I
yeah.
just
You
found
can-
out
you
my
can-
neighbor has a laser cutter and a laser engraver, so I'm like, okay, between the two of us, he's like, got it.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
I have one of those too. It's been a while since I've used it because it's kind of a pain. The one that I have is kind of a pain in the ass. The laser element, I bought it more than a decade ago, and
Oof.
the laser element is water cooled.
So you gotta hook it
like,
up, get it circulating, clean it out,
yeah.
dry it out when you're done. Yeah.
Nope, I do that. But I can't go take it to my workshop and put it in my workshop because my workshop is unheated in the wintertime. And the replacement tube was like the cost of the machine was like $2,000.
So get a.
But-
You know what that means? It's time to get a new laser cutter.
You're right. And I was looking at the X Tool F1 Ultra 20-watt fiber and dual diode laser engraver at Christmas time, and they
Oh.
were on sale.
I saw one of those at
And-
ShmooCon.
And they are not on sale anymore. And
How much are
because they
they?
were on sale at Christmas.
How much are they?
It's $5,000.
Oh, Jesus. So they had
Yep.
the small one at ShmooCon, and they were like laser etching anything you wanted. And,
Yep.
You know, for free.
Yep. So this one, because it's got the 20-watt fiber laser, it will engrave metal, and not just engrave, it will like actually engrave 3D relief
Oh, damn.
metal. Like amazing. Like you think of a challenge coin and how they're 3D relief type of
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just now I'm going to tell the whole audience, and many of you probably already know this website, but
I don't.
this was sent to me by Dave Johnson. It's called plasticfantasticdeals.com. I go to their filament feed, plasticfantasticdeals.com.
Can you put that in Slack, please?
Yeah, I will. I don't know if my copy paste buffer.
Oh,
is-
dude. Oh, dude.
Yeah. Plasticfantasticdeals.com.
What the hell? This is awesome.
And so recently I found, I can't find it on here now, but I did find on, so what it highlighted was on Amazon, ESON filaments, really good, and a reason for like a good low cost filament. I found 4 1 kilogram rolls for $40. So like $10 a roll for a kilogram roll is like a fantastic price. And so I mean, it doesn't ship to like March, but I'm like, whatever, like, yeah. And it was only in black, but I'm like, whatever, for $10 a roll,
Oh,
that's fantastic.
This is gorgeous.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot glow in the
We'll have
dark.
to have Dave Johnson back on. So I don't know
Yeah.
if you were on that episode, Josh, but last year.
Yeah, I was
it
there
last
when
year?
Dave was on for a couple episodes.
Yeah, like he brought his A1 Mini
Yep.
into the studio
I
and was
remember
talking about
that.
3D
I
printing.
did some stuff with Darren's and
Yeah. So I
while we
messaged Dave and
chatted.
I'm like, dude, like, so tell me about where you buy filament. He's like, he gave me like a whole thing. And this was one of the websites he said to
Well,
order from.
there's a subreddit that does 3D printing deals as well. And
Yep.
I think it's reddit.com/r/3D printing deals, I think, but just Google it, you'll find it.
One, I think this is amazing because you can tell by looking at the history of our podcast, like
Mhm.
where some of the conversation diverges to about our current hobbies and passions.
Mhm.
Like for a while, Paul was doing Python, and then we were doing a software-defined radio. With
Good Lord,
GPS
now I'm trying to
spoofing,
code in C++, and man, am I rusty. Holy crap. Like, pun intended, I guess. But, like, I am still trying to remember. I'm like, oh, yeah, include files and all that stuff and defining the function prototype in the include file, and then the CPP file defines the actual function, and then, yeah, I had to, like, really sort some stuff out.
You know, you can write in Python and translate it.
There's a GPT that I bet will do that really well.
I'm sure. I like the Arduino Maestro is the GPT I'm using on Chat GPT. I like that one a lot for helping me with the Arduino stuff. But yeah, I had to like relearn a bunch of C++ stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, I need a semicolon at the end of the line. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this now. Hey, I'm all good.
Getting us back on track a little bit here because we only got a little bit more time.
We got about 17 minutes. We got 17 minutes.
I would love to talk about Sam's story number 6 because Mandy and I have been trying to do this.
Let's do it.
Get together to talk about a story about back to basics type of thing.
Yeah, the password managers, eh?
Mandy had to drop off, but this was one of the ones that I thought was really a good sort of back to basics type of thing. So this one's for Mandy.
Yeah, this is the one about password managers, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it matches, we had this discussion, I think, last week when we had a guest with a password manager. And, like I say, years ago on this podcast, I found out that the most password managers have all your secrets just sitting in RAM all the time, and it's easy to steal them. And now they've found that malware is doing that. A whole lot of malware now steals all the contents of your password manager. So it's a real risk. And they say you should have two-factor authentication whenever possible and a strong master password, but that's not going to save you. If it does memory scraping and it's just sitting there in RAM, any malware that runs with user privileges, not even admin privileges on your machine, can just steal them all. And it's a fundamental weakness. And I remember last week, I asked that expert about password managers, I said, can you do anything about that? And he said, not really, because it's a convenience feature, right? If it was encrypted, you'd have to keep putting in your master password every time you logged into a site. Yep. So he said the real solution is coming, where you'll have biometric authentication all the time, where you have to show it your face to log into every site. Then it could be encrypted and only decrypted briefly when you use it. But the way this is a fundamental design flaw. So, the author of this article says, everyone should use password managers. Don't quit using them for this reason. But when I think about it, I'm not sure that's true. I mean, it is true that password managers do expose your secrets in RAM in a way that if you were to write them on paper, it wouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah. No, and Sam, the sort of the tack that I took about this was thinking about some of the way the malware might be recovering your passwords would be to download the database and do brute force password cracking offline.
But you don't even have to do that. If you have malware on your machine, it does RAM scraping too. So, I mean, some things, like I think Microsoft used to say it's encrypted in the registry, and I don't know. I'm skeptical because I don't remember having to type in the master password when you use it. So whatever it's encrypted with, the key must be sitting around somewhere.
Right.
Yep.
So, can there be a protected region of memory that it uses that you would have to? It's interesting. You would have to authenticate to that to gain access to that protected area of memory.
I mean, if I open,
and that could be susceptible. So it's
see, if I open the browser to a page, it fills it in without asking me for credential. So it must be accessible through userland process without any further authentication. So malware is going to be able to get at it, I think, unless you have something set up that's really hard to use. And that kind of defeats the purpose.
Right. And that's what I believe was Matt Bishop from Bitwarden was talking about is that he admitted, he's like, yes, this is absolutely a threat. And you can mitigate some of this threat by tuning your settings. So, every 60 seconds, it could expire and it could remove it from memory, but then you'd have to enter your master password every time.
It would have to be,
which, I mean, there's a balance there.
Yeah, like every time I went to go to authenticate to a website and I had to enter my master password, I mean, I'd be okay with that. As long as I remember one password that had something that actually used the passwords elsewhere that I could use, I'd be okay.
Yeah,
with
maybe.
But
that would be
also
all
you
right.
can have the local password manager running on your system, not as a browser extension.
Mhm.
And you can not have it autofill, but you can copy and paste.
Yeah, but that's horribly inconvenient.
It's
But I think
inconvenient, but it's still in your copy. It's still in your copy paste buffer.
buffer.
But I think you can also have settings where it
flushes the buffer.
the software flushes the copy paste buffer to help mitigate that risk.
But if you don't enter your master password every time, then I think it's still in RAM. It's still accessible to the password manager process that's running. So malware would be able to harvest it from there.
It's encrypted in RAM.
Yep.
You're absolutely right, Sam. Now we need something with homomorphic encryption, so it stays encrypted and can be utilized.
Or I mean, just just don't get malware on your system is also
but that's but I think the practical solution is biometrics, like he says. If it was your phone and you just had to look at it every time, that wouldn't be too irritating.
Which
could you use Windows Hello though? Could you say, hey, I'm in a web browser, I want my credentials to go in here, and it's like no. Windows Hello has to use the biometric authentication. Yep. Right. That could work too.
Like that's what the Mac does, or my iPhone does. Like if I want to,
I mean, if you recompile your kernel enough, you can do it in Linux too.
Right. No, you can't.
So, I mean, you
I said enough, Josh. Enough.
Well, they have Fido. Isn't that what Fido 2 is? I think it is.
Yeah. I'm thinking. I think it's a change in the paradigm. The increasing the bar to access that data. I mean, because you got to decrypt it to use it, whether you're displaying it or sending it somewhere.
Right.
So
putting in the copy paste buffer, and like that was a tool that Adam Crompton, not Compton, Crompton, came up with it in Guardians. Yeah. 5 years ago was to continuously monitor copy paste buffer because he was starting to use it as C2, but there was no other reasons why you couldn't use it for harvesting anything that got put into your copy paste buffer, like the output from a password manager.
And what Joshua said actually reminds me, he said could work. If you used modern homomorphic encryption, then when you filled in a website, it wouldn't decrypt everything. It would just decrypt the one thing you need, and you could set it to only decrypt like one item every few minutes or something. And then you wouldn't be able to easily steal everything. Yeah.
And combine that with a physical token. Like imagine that every time you wanted to go to a website, it goes, cool, check your phone. Or YubiKey or phone using the phone, because the phone can now be a FIDO token, right? Yeah. And check your phone and just do a push notification, which is not that horrible. Use your phone's biometrics and you're done.
What's that? Google Passkey.
Or what you do is every time it ends up in the copy paste buffer and you authenticate, you just immediately change your password.
Fuck you. No.
And then but then it stores it in the password.
And then it stores it in the password
vault. You don't ever
vault.
need to know it.
And it just rotates. I mean, passwords. But I think we're coming down to
PAMs do.
Password, right? Rightly, passwords are a thing of the past, right? We shouldn't rely on these static passwords for authentication. We should be moving to things like passkeys. We should be moving to things like multi-factor authentication and biometric authentication. So we're not relying on the sole way that an application knows that Paul Asadorian is the remembrance of a secret.
Right.
Now,
a secret phrase.
Point out
you
one
can
thing.
put your passkey in the password manager now. Does the passkey require biometrics to use it? I think it does.
Yes.
It should. It should.
Okay,
but
that's good.
And it should also have some kind of, I think at least on first login, should have some kind of second factor.
Well, it should on every login. You have your phone. Just click your phone and use that.
But that varies per system, Josh. Like
True. Okay.
First login, or even better, like the Beyond Trust, right? Like if you're logging in from the same computer from the same IP address, then it doesn't challenge you. But if I build a new computer, right, it goes, whoa, wait. Now you got to prove that Paul's really Paul right now, right? Like Google does a great job of that, in my opinion. Google's fantastic
You know what that is? That's
job of
zero
that. Which,
trust.
to the point where it's kind of annoying.
Yes.
But it does agree, and that depends on how the administrator configures it. Like oftentimes, I have to enter my password multiple times. Like it knows, like, hey, I know you've authenticated from this device again, but yeah, you know what? Just to be sure, like your Chrome version changed or whatever, you got to do it again. You got to do it again, which is fine. You know what? I'm like totally fine, totally fine.
Yeah, I
So-
guess that's the point. I mean,
Because
the
then I
password
use
managers-
the
yeah.
password manager to just
Yeah.
automatically copy and paste the thing in.
One real quick thing. Whatever you do, don't get rid of the idea of a master password. And the reason is this. Paul, if you lost your phone right now
Mm-hmm.
and we're 20 miles from home and your car was broken down, and there's a somebody stops and you say, hey, can I borrow your phone? Who are you calling? Whose number do you have memorized?
My wife.
Right. But if
Yep,
we
my
don't,
wife, my kids, my house,
right. But if
my
we don't have
mother-in-law.
any,
And they're going to answer the phone if I call from someone other number? No.
No.
you text them, hey, this is Paul. I got, I lost my phone and I'm stranded. Answer the phone.
Also herpes.
And they
but
say, "Boy,
you
I'm
should
too
also,
smart to
you
fall
should
for
also
that."
have keywords, but you should also have keywords that you agree on with your friends and family
Yeah.
as like safe words that they know that it's really you.
Yep.
Nice job.
Like 100%. I'm not joking. Like 100%.
No, that
You
was
should
an
have the
official
rest-
FBI
But
recommendation.
I think
yeah.
we do this. Like I've done this so many times with my hacker friends where we'll join some new thing because we're always joining some new friggin' thing, right? Like, we went from IRC to Jabber to
Signal.
Discord to Slack to Signal, and how have we validated who we really are?
Passwords.
We ask questions.
Mhm.
Well, if you're really Josh Marpet, tell me like something that only Josh and I would know, right? How do I know it's really Josh?
I'm not going to say it on air, on live air, but yes, I
No,
agree.
I'm like, dude, what are you known for wearing at security conferences back in the day?
Assless chaps.
I mean, I guess someone would know that. Assless chaps is
Assless
definitely,
chaps.
definitely one of the
And yes,
answers.
I know assless
Chaps,
and
by
chaps are
definition,
redundant.
Mhm.
Or
Are
assless.
assless. Yes.
Yeah. It's
What
not
was-
as chaps
what was-
I remember him for wearing at the conferences, but we'll leave it at that. He
What was
he
Larry
definitely
famous
did
for
not make
wearing?
an anonymous impression.
What was Larry famous for wearing in front of his groin?
A Linksys WT54G router. Yep.
But hey,
I guess there's multiple questions. You can't just leave it to just one question.
Right.
Someone could do some OS.
And remember, just because I have to say it, the quizzes on Facebooks are to get the answers to these security questions out of you. Please don't answer.
oh,
Yes.
100%, 100%.
no, they don't reveal cool articles I really want to see with pictures that shouldn't be published.
Sing the most famous song, "The Year You Were Born." Now they know what year you were born.
That's
Like-
it.
like-
Yeah, I actually stopped doing those quizzes because they got you signed up for more other stuff without even consideration of security implication. This was like
I have one more story, Paul.
Go for it. Go.
yeah,
Larry.
My
All right, one more.
story number, where'd it go? 2.
two dose.
Oh, dude, was this your?
This was not my article,
Hmm.
but when I was doing my research on it, I also stumbled across El Camtuff's article.
But wait, an RJ45 to USB adapter is, in my mind, an Ethernet.
It is an
Do you-
Yep.
okay.
It's a so this particular one, there was a whole bunch of
Like this one right here.
there was a whole bunch of FUD going
Well, this
around.
has a lot of stuff in it.
There was a whole bunch of
I
stuff
was
going
taping
around.
I was taping this
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
You shut up.
But this is
You shut up. So there was a bunch of FUD, or there was a bunch of stories going around that this cheap $1.20 USB-C to RJ45 Ethernet adapter 10100
Mhm.
Adapter from China, because they were $1.20 from AliExpress, contained malware. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Are we still on the 10100?
Well, but it was $1.20, dude. So yeah, you're going to be on a
You
dollar.
know what's interesting? Like crappy Wi-Fi versus that. Sometimes a 10100 is probably
Sometimes you just need Ethernet. Like,
Yeah.
so I sent you over some link about this was our level of nerdery with the micro 10-inch travel rack mount stuff. It was in
Oh,
Slack
dude,
earlier
yeah.
today.
Like
In
that,
any case, maybe you
we
need
need to talk about that
maybe
too.
maybe you need Ethernet. In this case,
This
but
needs to be a longer show.
so they said, "Oh, everybody's complaining that these things contain malware." because effectively what they did was they
I love your
this is
red
not me.
nail polish.
This is not me. This is Al Camptoff.
Sorry, no, this is someone else.
But similar type of analysis here, and they talked about how they could have gone and used some of this for you. But the deal was with this Ethernet adapter, instead of shipping a CD with it with the drivers on it, because who has a CD-ROM drive anymore, right?
No,
Nobody.
I do.
No.
I do. I still.
There is a flash chip, like 120, a 512 meg flash chip inside the USB Ethernet adapter, so that when you plug it in, it mounts as a CD-ROM.
As a drive. Oh, as a
CD-ROM. And on the CD-ROM drive are the drivers for this USB card. Because
which are signed?
That's a great question.
Mm.
They are not. To the best of my knowledge, they are not signed.
Which is fine. The user just clicks, yeah, I trust this driver.
But so the big deal is that, yeah, they're not signed, or they are potentially not to be signed. And that people are saying that, yeah, they're malware because the setup.exe is full of viruses and C2.
How do they know that?
Exactly. And that was the thing. Like it was very much an attack on Chinese manufacturer type of stuff. Like they're putting,
are they just saying?
So here's what I did.
Jesus Christ.
Very similar things to what Al Camptoff did. I went and bought 4 of these off of AliExpress.
Okay.
Oh my God.
They arrived at my house about a week later.
And you spent all of $5 plus shipping.
And I think I bundled with them some other stuff that I needed.
Oh,
so it was
for sure. Like you can never order just one thing.
It's like they're like Lay's potato chips. You can't eat just
raise
one.
your hand if you can not order just one thing from AliExpress.
So I pulled one of these things apart, and I plugged it into a sacrificial Mac. Well, first,
I just like how you have sacrificial Macs laying around.
Let me back up. First thing I did was I opened one of these things up, and yep, sure enough, there's a flash chip, and I desoldered the flash chip from the board, put it into my reader, and dumped the contents of flash.
I love that. That makes me like
don't even plug this.
I'm
thing
like
in.
mildly turned on right now. Actually,
put it in the adapter. Use flash dump or flash ROM to dump it, and
now you're speaking my language, Larry. Wow.
Did a file on it, ISO 9001 file system. It's a CD-ROM drive image. So I mounted the CD-ROM drive image, pulled the executables off, and uploaded them to VirusTotal. Guess how many threats VirusTotal found in these files?
Let me guess, 0.
Correct. Actually, it was 1, and they couldn't actually tell you why it was 1. But out of the 69 engines that they ran, 1 came back as a positive, and all of the analysis, every lookup that it was finding as part of the activity went to Microsoft.
It sounds like
it was not a
ISO
single
9660 formatted CD-ROM
with
emulator.
completely legitimate drivers that went to Microsoft update.
Which,
the only
if
one
you're old, you remember doing this shit.
So the point being was that there was no malware on this. So I'm like, okay, well, there's no malware on this. I plugged this thing into a sacrificial Mac. I plugged this thing into
Wait, did it have Mac? Does Mac require drivers for this? Or
so the point being is they don't ship CDs. So you're supposed to plug this thing in and it's supposed to auto mount as a thumb drive or a CD-ROM so that you can get the drivers. Regardless of whether it's Windows drivers or not.
Right. Yeah.
But it should mount as a thumb drive.
Mm-hmm.
I plugged it into a Mac. Didn't mount as shit. It's USB-C, so I'm like, well, maybe I have to turn it upside down. Didn't mount as shit. Didn't mount as anything. So I plugged it into a Linux box. LSUSB shows an Ethernet adapter. No disk.
You need to recompile your kernel.
Plugged it into a Windows box. You know what it did?
Nothing.
You have a new Ethernet adapter. No drive. That function didn't even work.
So it didn't even pull the drivers off the. It didn't mount it.
Didn't mount anything.
Yeah, it didn't mount anything.
And then it was. It doesn't pull automatically the drivers. There's a setup.exe that you have to run. But I couldn't even get it to do that. Period.
But it still worked without.
Oh yeah, because Windows, Mac OS, and Linux already have built-in drivers for it.
It uses the built-in drivers.
Yeah, the point being here, the functionality that I observed, there was no way for it even to get it to mount it as a drive to get to those drivers. The only way I got to those drivers was by doing chip off. I took the flash
Maybe
chip
older,
off the
but
device.
maybe that was for older Windows versions that don't have the driver built in.
That's for Windows XP and Windows 7.
yeah.
All right, it was. I mean, it was.
Vista,
but-
something like that.
Because the
If
thing
I-
about 10100, think about 10100 though. We're going back to.
But it's USB-C.
Oh, that's weird.
But it's USB-C. The point being here is that
What do they do? Take an older chipset and
Yeah, it's an old
put
chipset.
an old chipset and with USB-C on it.
But
yeah.
the point being here is that great, it's an older chipset. Maybe you don't have drivers for it. You plug it into your system. It's supposed to mount as a drive so you can install these malware drivers. It never mounts as a drive.
Yeah, so it's fine.
So this,
It never gives
So
you access to
it's
this
fine.
malware,
I mean, the one I have is not USB-C; it's regular USB-A.
but it doesn't also plug in
Yeah.
and it doesn't present as a drive and an adapter.
This is a pluggable one,
Mhm.
USB
Still-
3.0.
still-
This is gigabit Ethernet.
Still doesn't
adapter.
present as a
and
hard-
this worked on Linux.
Still
by the
doesn't
way.
present
I didn't
as a
even have
hard
to
drive.
recompile
You
my
want to
kernel. and
recompile
it
the
worked.
kernel? Jesus, that's
No,
amazing.
it just worked.
Still doesn't present as a drive to copy files off of for your
This
drivers that are
Modern
eventually
Windows has the
backdoored.
RTL 81, whatever it is, 8185s, already built in as drivers. Big deal. Done.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah. The point being is I could never get the actual drive function to work. And the only way I could actually get to the contents was to do chip off. And when I did chip off and dump the contents of that flash chip,
People are
There
being
was no
dramatic,
malware.
Larry? Oh, no.
yep.
Wait, did Larry just fall for the FUD?
No. I
No,
wanted to, I
Larry
wanted to
Larry debunked the FUD. That was the whole,
No.
I think,
Okay.
purpose of that
Yep.
whole coverage of that article is Larry
course.
debunked the FUD.
Let's be
Fudge.
clear.
Fudge.
Larry got a tax write-off on buying some USB Wi-Fi.
a whole $5.
and determined them to be not malicious, where now Larry and everyone can use them and be safe.
And even better. I only had to take one of them apart to be successful in the
Right.
chip off.
Right.
I have four that are
Because at
sorry, I still-
$1.25,
I still
you're
have-
not going to put that chip back on it.
No, no.
Fuck that.
I have three of them are still brand new in the
Right.
package. And the one that I took the chip off, I practiced putting it back on.
Ooh.
So
I was going to say it still works, but I have no idea because it never actually presents it as a drive and never did.
Yeah, right. But it still works as an Ethernet adapter?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, win. It's like total win.
Win.
Total win.
I got to tell you, in the last 2 weeks, I have practiced so much doing firmware dumping
Mm-hmm.
by doing chip off and putting the chip back on and having it still work.
Dude, that's awesome. I think
Uh,
that's a great place to end
I-
because we're over time.
Yep.
But I love that story, Larry.
Yeah.
And when I have stuff that I want, that I've taken the chip off that I want to work again, I'm going to bring it to Larry. So
Yeah.
thank you, everyone, for listening and watching to this edition of Paul Security Weekly. Larry, take us out.
Over and chip off.